cut money for local government, which is still going on, and using local authorities as the vehicle to carry out Tory austerity. And so we have now, 9 years later, most local authorities have lost half their income from central government, and you see the results of it all over the country. In boarded up youth centres, closed libraries, sold swimming pools, leisure facilities and sports facilities that are sometimes priced out of the reach of the very people they were designed to help. This is a really stupid way of approaching the needs of communities. I want us to get a Labour government that would be supporting local government, that would be working with local government to develop the housing, leisure, arts and social care facilities that we all depend on and all need. And that's partly what these elections are about, getting that message out there of what we can do when we're in office, but above all, what the opportunities there would be with a Labour government that wouldn't continue with austerity, that wouldn't continue subsidising the very rich with tax breaks, whilst at the same time underfunding the needs of the poor. I don't want to live in a country where those people in work, some in our National Health Service, have to access food banks just to make ends meet, just to put food on the table. I don't want to live in a country where the numbers of people rough sleeping goes up year on year, or the number of people living in insecure emergency private rented accommodation goes up year on year, with all the stress that gives to children in not knowing where they're going to be living in a year's time. And the mental health crisis that we're facing needs to be addressed by, yes, more money and resources into mental health services, but also thinking about the stress we put people through in their lives, the levels of debt and personal indebtedness that people have just to make ends meet. That also is a cause of, in part, of the mental health crisis. It's an attitude to life and society that Labour has a totally and completely different agenda from the Tories on, and that is the message we've got to be able to convey on the doorstep. Later on, National Education Union conference in Liverpool. They very kindly invited me to speak to them, and I'll be going there to give a number of messages to them. First of all, to say thank you to the teachers of this country and the work they do to try and support and help them. Secondly, to recognise that when a fifth of all our teachers are seriously thinking about giving up a profession they love because of the stress they're under, with the levels of testing that go on and the league table obsessions that have been imposed by central government, I'll be saying to them, well, actually, things need to change. And I want the legacy of the next Labour government to be something dramatic. The 45 to 51 Labour government, led by Clement Attlee's great legacy is the National Health Service. Healthcare free at the point of use for everybody. A Labour idea, a Labour tradition, and absolutely a Labour core value. Our legacy will be a National Education Service, where we take away the principle of education as a commodity and return it to the principle of a right. A right to learn, a right to learn. Free nursery provision for all 2 to 4 year olds, ensuring that all children in primary schools get a good meal in the middle of the day, and a pupil arts premium to ensure that the creativity in children is enabled, expanded and given space, so that every child can get to learn a musical instrument, whether their parents can afford to buy a violin or not. Those going through education later on, we had a lot of discussion in the party just before the last general election, during the period we were writing the manifesto. It was a very intensive period. The election was announced and we had to put the manifesto together. And as you know, for the many, not the few, is still in print and still being sold and still in demand, because it was such a, I believe, very, very good document. I thank all those that contributed to it, because all of you contributed to it with your views in the party. One of the issues we had to face was the cost of university and college education. And we looked at that, and we looked at the difficulties surrounding apprenticeships and costs of them, or availability of them. And what we want is a parity of esteem between vocational and academic education. So that doing a vocational course is just as valuable for society as doing an academic course. You need plumbers, you need electricians, you need computer scientists, just as much as you need the academic professions as well. When young people go to university and leave with a debt of £50,000 and more, something is badly wrong there. Other countries don't do that, and so we looked at all the figures, and it's a difficult decision, and we took the view it was right to increase corporate taxation to the level it was in 2010 in order to fund education for all within our society. We need to be a better trained, better skilled, better equipped, better educated society, and to have an education system that unlocks the creativity of all, not this obsessive league tableism which pushes too many young people to one side when they should be in the system. That's surely the right way. But it's also about the economy that we develop in order to support all of this, and the way in which we treat our natural world and environment to deal with this. And so we have challenged austerity. It was a political choice. It wasn't an economic necessity. It was a political choice made by the Tories in 2010, and we've seen the results of it, the growing inequality and the poverty that goes with it. That has to stop. But it also has to be a society that invests for the future. Why do we invest so little in this country compared to what we need? And so we will establish a large national investment bank which will deal with huge national infrastructure projects, but also it will be backed up by regional development banks, locally managed, locally led and locally decision made, so that the necessity of more localised projects will be there, and it will also be supporting development of new industries and new technologies, and be prepared to support companies that are stuck having grown on an innovative idea and cannot access capital funding in order to grow anymore, so they end up selling out to a hedge fund and the manufacturing process goes somewhere else. We'll be a government that supports the development of clean, green energy jobs and manufacturing industry within our society. One of the great issues of our time that we face is the environmental crisis around the world. The Paris Climate Change Accord was an incredible step forward. I was there in Paris when the accord was being discussed and was finally agreed on. It was an incredible move forward. People at last realised you cannot go on treating the planet in the way that we do. Donald Trump wants to walk away from that. We want to walk towards that and make it stronger and more effective. And therefore, I've been talking to good friends in the United States, and I have a lot of good friends in the United States. Don't believe the Sun or the Daily Mail. Absolutely, and the whole point there is the Green New Deal, which is, and I explained some of this in my contribution to our conference last year, about investment in green energy sustainable jobs, which could create 400,000 jobs across Britain in that process. But it's also comes back to the our local councils. When you take planning decisions, you take planning decisions on lots of grounds. You also take those planning decisions on environmental grounds. How efficient is that building? Is it carbon neutral? Are the solar panels on the roof? Is there a geothermal heating plant associated with it, which in some parts of the country is possible, other parts is not so easy. All those decisions have to be made on the sustainability of it and the biodiversity of our very existence and our lives. So a farming policy which isn't tearing up every regulation we've ever achieved through Europe and lining up with Donald Trump. It is about ensuring we improve and develop our biodiversity in our own society and do the same across the world through the trade agreements we reach and through the international aid that we support other people and other economies with. Because it's the socialist way, it's a Labour way of doing things. And we fight these elections to win in the locality on the principle of what we can do when communities come together. And push this government to have a general election. The media is dominated completely by Brexit at the moment. I put forward the view there has to be a customs union, there has to be a trade agreement, there has to be protection of those rights and the rights that we've got through the European Union as the floor from which we will grow. there also has to be some big decisions taken, and the public must be involved in those decisions. We have defeated this government more times than any other government has been defeated. And we will carry on doing that. But to me, it is unsustainable that this government can stay in office. And so there'll have to be a general election sometime soon. I tell you what, we are absolutely ready for it. We've selected our candidates in all of the constituencies that we see as a priority to try and gain, and we're working very hard in campaigning. But our campaigning is different. It's local, it's community-based, we have community organisers, it's the party working with communities all around the country. So that when we win that election, it won't be the individuals that won that election, it will be the communities coming together in their expression of the kind of world and kind of society they want to live in. I just finished on this. We had a very good discussion in Leyland this morning about problems of crime and insecurity within the town, and they're serious and they're considerable. We spent quite a long time discussing it, and of course the discussion went much wider. It went straight on to police numbers, to PCSOs, it went on to mental health, it went on to youth facilities, it went on to open space, it went on to planning, it went on to transport. It's the totality of society. If people are to live secure lives, then they need the security of knowing they have a National Health Service. They do have a principle that we don't want people to be sleeping rough and homeless. They have an education service that will be the best and make the best for every young person that goes in it. And we'll have a social security system, not universal credit that makes most of those families £50 a week worse off, or what I consider to be the immorality of the two-child policy. There will be that safety net principle, and a government that's serious about investing in jobs, economy and development of our society. And on the world stage, be a force for peace, be a force for human rights, a force for environmental sustainability, and we won't go around the world blaming those millions of people that are refugees at the present time. They're human beings just like us, who need our help and support. Those are the principles on which we work. Those are the principles on which we work as a party. And I'm really impressed and proud of the manifesto you've put forward. And I'll be taking it away with me, filching out all the best bits and putting them in a manifesto. I'm now being stared at in a very hostile way by all of my team and everyone who works for the party. They're saying, Jeremy, please, shut up. Because they all need to be out knocking on the doors this afternoon in order to elect your wonderful team and your good self to make sure that Labour keep control of this council and use that as a basis to get a Labour government. Thank you. It's in the Labour Party Constitution and Rule Book that no event is free from a raffle. And it's like, you know, we've got clause 4 and we've got the raffle rules.
How many prizes have we got?
The first one is, it's on a blue and white ticket, I guess they probably all are. 146 to 150, now Sam.
Oh, that's me!
Oh, Jimmy! Redraw!
Well, apparently Louise was promised a prize earlier, so it's only fair.
She can have her seat.
Well, we believe you, it's fine.
176?
Yeah, back there. Yes, that's correct.
Ryan Hopkins, 186.
Well done.
Hey!
Abstaining.
David on 46.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah, you are, David.
Oh,
You've put the sheet through it, not me.